Miami Vice stars Jamie Foxx, Colin Farrell, Gong Li, Naomi Harris, and John Ortiz. Written and directed by Michael Mann. It was released on Blu-ray August 26, 2008, and runs 2 hours, 20 minutes. The movie begins with an undercover operation at a nightclub to catch a high-class pimp, which takes a sudden turn and changes to the main story of drug traffickers who are finding out undercover agents and murdering them during the exchange. When Sonny Enrico's former informant is blackmailed into giving up 2 undercover feds to the bad guys, they go undercover to try and find out who's responsible. Once they find out who's involved, it leads them into a drug operation larger than they first thought. They want to stay undercover to take down the leader, Jesus Montoya, played by Louis Tosar. There's also a side story with Sonny getting involved with Isabella, played by Gong Li, the businesswoman working for the traffickers. They fall in love, but it's a situation that can have no future. She doesn't know who he really is, and she works for the bad guys. In the end, they get most of the bad guys, but the big boss gets away, which was something that happened in the original show once or twice. Speaking of the show, they keep general references to it to a minimum. Besides mostly character names and locations, the 80s atmosphere and feel are left in the past in favor of a modern take. While the show had some levity at times, this movie takes itself completely serious. When they do talk to a character who injects a small amount of humor, the scene is still played serious. The movie borrows the story and bits of dialogue from Season 1, Episode 15 of the show, Smuggler's Blues. Except in the episode, it's undercover law enforcement murdering smugglers. Jamie Foxx has a line saying, "Let's take it to the limit one more time," possibly referring to the song Take It to the Limit, co-written by Glenn Frey, who guest starred in the Smuggler's Blues episode. The episode, which is named after and uses the song Glenn Frey wrote as a solo artist. So the artist of the song, referenced in the film, guest starred in the episode that the movie is heavily based on. They also use a cover of In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins, who was also involved with the show a couple times. I read in one publication that original show veterans Edward James Olmos and musician Jan Hammer were asked to return, and they both turned it down. Then I read elsewhere, no one from the original was asked to return because Michael Mann didn't want this movie to have any relation to the show. If there are 2 takes on this, it's probably a case of what the director wanted versus what the out-of-touch studio executives wanted. Ultimately, I'm glad they didn't get any original cast members to appear in the movie. The show was unmistakably completely 80s and a perfect, revolutionary product of its time. Seeing those actors again in this film with a completely different time period and feel, even as cameos, wouldn't feel right. It's weird though, the movie feels connected to the franchise, but has its own identity. With all this talk of the original source material, I think it's safe to say that this movie isn't for anyone who isn't a fan of Miami Vice. I've never met anyone who wanted to watch or liked this movie. Maybe because I've never met another Miami Vice fan. So that equals me, like a loser, sitting there on my own in the theater opening night. Yes, I went to the theater alone to see this movie. The music score is not too bad, with a couple good pieces. It's got less of a cinematic score feel, in favor of a more modern Jan Hammer synth-style score. I really like the licensed soundtrack as well. I'm always in a reflective, somber mood when I finish this movie. It's not a completely happy ending, and the credits music fits perfect with that ending. One thing I noticed about the 2 main characters is that they're perfect. They don't mess up, and they can do no wrong, which ironically ends up being one of their flaws. Jose Hierro, played by John Ortiz, the man responsible for giving them their smuggling assignments, gets suspicious and tells his boss, Jesus Montoya, that they're wrong somehow, that they're too good at what they do. He takes a dislike to Sonny right away and seems jealous of his and Isabella's relationship, later trying to sabotage them. The case takes them to a variety of locations, from the Caribbean, South America, and of course, Miami. The scenery ranges from downright beautiful to shabby slum streets of third world areas. Even though they did film in different locations to substitute places stated in the film, it's still well shot and beautiful. This is one of the first big-budget films shot on digital cameras. There's some great cinematography in this movie, with airplanes flying, cars speeding, and speedboats racing. As usual, you get these cool, moody night scenes Michael Mann is so good at. Though some inconsistency in the night shots show that some are crisp, while others are grainy. A quick POV of a character looking and focusing on the highway before walking into traffic was a clever touch. Candid shots where you feel you're watching someone from afar, or watching someone watching someone. Another scene that seems to fascinate me happens in a group conversation. Sonny looks away, focusing out the window. A calming moment happens as he looks out at the ocean scenery while the conversation continues, fading into the background. While it looks like he stopped paying attention, he suddenly jumps back into the conversation, still following it. Was this to show how observant a detective he is? What was the character thinking looking out at the ocean like that? This scene just does something to me. I've become fascinated by it. Again, another Michael Mann film, another cast of mumbling actors. Some of the cast speak loudly and clearly enough to be heard, but you will hardly understand anything the two main characters are saying. Overall, if you're not an existing Miami Vice fan, I wouldn't bother. It's a well-made film, well shot, beautiful at times, but the mumbling characters are kind of annoying. I'm curious to hear what fans of the show think of it, so let me know in the comments. 7.5 out of 10.
So what's going on?
As in?
As in, there's undercover, and then there is which way is up.